Tonight we continue a series of interviews with candidates running in this year's city election. Our guest is one of the candidates for mayor in the preliminary election on September 24th. He's currently the city councilor for District 8, which includes Beacon Hill, Back Bay, Fenway, and Mission Hill. We'd like to welcome Mike Ross. Thank you very much for being with us, Councilor.
Great to be here.
I want to start with what you were doing yesterday, talking about leadership in the Boston Police Department. It seems that you're not quite calling for a new police commissioner, but you're calling for him maybe to do some things differently.
Yeah, calling for, well, a couple things. I'm telling you what I will do as mayor of the city of Boston, something that I believe is important in all of our administration, in all of city government, but in particular in public safety, where the real key element between the community and the police is trust. I think that trust is only fostered by, the relationships that come about from community policing. And so our police department has to look like, it has to reflect the people that it serves. And it doesn't. It just doesn't. There's not a single woman at the senior superintendent level, and there's not a single police captain at the captain level who's a person of color. And, so at the leadership level in the police department, we don't see that. We also don't see it reflected in the ranks to the same, to what our city is. And so, and we're actually headed in the wrong direction. We're actually seeing a decline there. Now, I know the courts aren't necessarily with us in it, and it makes it harder, but all the more reason why when there's an opportunity to promote and increase diversity at the higher ranks and sergeant levels and other areas, that we do it. And my response was based on the fact that the police department did not. And they only did it, they only increased out of 21 applicants, they made it a promotion of 5 white male sergeants, or 2 sergeant, just 5 white males, not a single person of color, knowing that there's a deficit in leadership at the police department. They did, and it was only after myself and Mamleo and a couple others said something where they made that change. So yeah, I got out front on this and said, this needs to change. We need to change the way we're approaching diversity in our police department.
Well, for a long time, we heard a commissioner talk about being handcuffed by civil service requirements as far as exams and hiring and even promotions. But I guess this is one case where he had discretion. But what about station commanders, the captains? Does he have that much wiggle room?
In promotions, there's more wiggle room. In some, it's harder than others. And so I know, the law is not necessarily on our side to say that diversity needs to be one of the reasons in which the promotion is made. That's what the United States Supreme Court said, more or less. So we live with that. But that's all the more reason when there's this opportunity to create promotions in the superintendent ranks, in the acting captain ranks, right? So there were opportunities to promote acting captains who would then be made full-fledged captains, who would have been captains of color, and those opportunities were not taken. There are opportunities, and they haven't been taken.
Public safety, we seem to be in a city of 2 cities here because, as the Municipal Research Bureau points out, violent crime is actually down this year if you look at the whole city, but shootings are up, and in Roxbury's Area B2, a very large increase in the number of homicides.
Yeah, 20%, 25% increase in shootings, 30% increase in homicides, over 80% increase in homicides by shootings. So the youth violence is problematic in our city right now, and it's peaking. I unveiled a plan last weekend on Saturday, and I did so in the so-called H Block community, which is an area where, near Dorchester, Roxbury, Humboldt Avenue, where there's been tremendous violence, tremendous youth violence, gang activity, shootings. I wanted to be there because until that corner improves, we'll know that really we haven't made the type of quantum improvements that we want to see in our city. And what happened was, it was great. The entire community came out, and we had something. We closed down the streets, and we had a street fair, and there was a lot of excitement and activity, and it was fun. And for that moment, it was great. And you saw what really the promise of what could occur in that community. At the heart of my plan, my public safety plan, is this notion of opportunity being how you fight crime, right? So that the opposite of violence is opportunity, at least as it applies to some of the gun violence and youth violence we're seeing in our city. We should talk about some of the horrific events that have occurred recently, that Amy Lord case, which is sobering and concerning, and I think there are other ways of approaching crime prevention in that area, without a doubt. But when it comes to the issue around youth violence, there are opportunities that we can make available to our kids in those communities that don't have to wind up in violence, that can instead wind up in jobs, in places to go, in places to gather, in youth service opportunities. When I was out there in that community, I was talking directly to the kids. I said, "Tell me what's up, guys. What is it you're looking for?" Each one of them talking about opportunities, place to go, a community center, places to work, summer jobs, the types of things that, yes, we've been providing in the city, but the types of things that I will prioritize as mayor of the city. When it comes to the issues that I just referenced around Amy Lord and the violence we've seen in other parts of the city, we have to make changes there too. One of the things that I would like to do is truly empower our police to be out in the community, on the streets, so that they don't have to go back to the police station, so that they can be where we need them, which is in plain view, in plain sight, in police clothing, and have a tremendous presence in our communities. So to me, that means substations in our neighborhoods. It means having every police officer having technology in their hand that can do as much as they can do in the police department back at the station, and having them out in the street and having them present. And it also means empowering systems in place, putting systems in place so that if something drops through the cracks, as it did in this case, someone is notified. Something is triggered that says, you missed something, because we don't have that. The detective monitoring system, the detective system that serves as a backup to back up human error, which will always occur in any community, even in a community such as the police department. When you have 2,400, thousands of, hundreds of people working in an environment, in a system, there will be human error. There needs to be a backup to that human error. We need to really rely on technology to back up that human error, and that's an area of improvement that I would look to make.
Well, one thing we heard from both the mayor's administration and police about this uptick in violence, at least in part of the city, is that you might have some people who are on the path to being career criminals, but they're spending time in the neighborhoods and they're sort of almost contaminating younger kids. And those younger kids, as you probably pointed out, they need something else to do to get them away from that. But I guess we need more resources. What's the missing link to helping those young people?
Well, it's providing every kid with an opportunity to have a career or a summer job, a place to go. It's providing schools and opportunities in our schools that create pathways where kids really want to go to schools. I think one of the great ways of changing the lives of a lot of young people will be to have a world-class technical vocational school in our city, so that kids are choosing careers and career paths and trades that they might otherwise not have available to them. We don't have that in our city. We don't have a tech voc school that would draw from a population that would otherwise get them, out of a hopeless path. If there's Worcester Tech High School, if your car breaks down, Chris, you could bring it to Worcester Tech High School and they'll fix it. Kids will fix it. You can get your hair cut there. There's a veterinarian clinic there that actually Tufts Veterinarian School is teaching kids how to become veterinarians. All those things are happening. They're happening in Worcester, it's happening in Cape Cod, it's happening in Brockton, it's happening all across the Commonwealth. It needs to happen here in Boston. So the work at Madison Park needs to occur. We need to support that. We need to invest in that school and create opportunities for our youth to be there. We have to expand after-school programs. We have to create electives in all of our schools. Arts, music, dance, gym, computer science. I mean, can you imagine Google says to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and it said to Boston that we need to train our kids to be better oriented in computer technology. Here in this city, where public education was created, and where technology was really perfected and created to some extent, We're being told now that we have to reteach our kids in that area. We have work to do there.
What about the missing piece as far as extended learning time after school, as far as getting, because there's another candidate in this race, he's drawing the lines as, no teacher contract unless we have that built in there. Where are the resources coming from for that?
So the resources to pay for extended learning. Yeah, I mean, first of all, we are going to have to work with the environment that's in place. So we are going to have to work with the teachers union and get there with them. We've done that in a few schools already, and we need to expand that to really all our schools, but starting first with the schools that need it most. We have to do that. And I believe that I'll pay for early child learning, which is critical to closing the achievement gap. And I believe that I'll pay for extended learning, a longer day, which is critical as well, through expanding growth in our city. I represent the Fenway, and the Fenway was gas station, parking lot, fast food restaurant. And our community got together and we replanned the Fenway area. And now it's 2 million square feet of development, $2 billion invested in that area. The tax revenue alone in that increase could fund all the things that I'm talking about. I think we can do that across the city. And I don't want to gentrify our city either. I want to build affordable housing on site. That's why I've proposed taking affordable housing out of the BRA and putting it into the Department of Neighborhood Development, so that as we build across this city and create opportunity across this city and places for people to gather and go across the city, we're also not ridding our city of the very people who made it great in the first place. We have to find a way to grow with the people who started here in the first place. And so my vision of this city is that check cashing places are instead community serving banks, where there is an investment in the people of that community and that community itself. And instead of food deserts in those neighborhoods, we have supermarkets and places to get healthy food. And instead of not having a gathering place, I mean, here we sit, and just hours from now, there are some neighborhoods that have nowhere to go tonight. There should be restaurants and places to go and places to gather in every single one of our neighborhoods, so that people can work second jobs, or that people can go somewhere with their family and take them to dinner. It's not fair that if you want to go out to dinner or if you want to go to a supermarket, it means you have to leave your neighborhood to go somewhere else.
I want to talk about one thing in your record, because being mayor means you got to get along with the unions, but you can't be too cozy either. When you were city council president, there was a firefighters contract, and because of the arbitrator's decision, it was seen as pretty generous, and it seemed the mayor couldn't do anything more about it. And rather than just rubber stamp it, you did something different.
Yeah, no, thanks for the invitation on that. I mean, it was different than even what my colleagues were suggesting we do as well. I said we couldn't afford it. I stood up and I said we couldn't afford it and that we need to renegotiate the contract. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, we were talking about shutting down libraries and laying off hundreds of other workers so that we could pay for this contract, which we couldn't afford. It would have amounted to $100,000 per person take home on top of their salary. And that's why we're shutting down these resources. Look, I'm a good Democrat. I support our first responders. They are heroes to us all. But I also support common sense. And I didn't think it made sense for us to lay off hundreds of others' unionized workforce so we could pay these salaries, these increases in the salary. And so I went to the floor of the city council and I said that we can't afford it. And in the end, we sat down with the union and the administration and renegotiated that contract and wound up saving $50 million. And we didn't have to shut down those libraries. And we didn't have to lay off those workers. But I'll tell you, it worked out. But at the time I proposed it, I was completely alone. I had some of my colleagues saying that we should just give the money to the firefighters, and I had others that refused to say anything because they wanted to see what would happen. But I think running for mayor and being mayor of the city of Boston means you're willing to stand up for what you believe in. So I'll return to what you started with. That's why I stood up the other day with the police department, with the Mamleo, communities of color police members. That's why I said with them that we need to have a police department that reflects the city that we serve. And that's why I'll always stand up for what I believe in, even when it's tough.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
Candidate for mayor of Boston, City Councilor Mike Ross.